Hey everybody, and welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to some more Warpforge. And we put out the poll for what Ultramarine deck you wanted to see, especially considering we've got the raid going on for the next few days. And I will be honest, though Titus is not my first pick when it comes to competitive Ultramarine builds right now, and I really do think there are at least two solid tier 2 options. Before I get ahead of myself, I'm going to have a ranked report coming out as well. And I think Titus is probably not my first pick, like I said, but I wanted to do a video because most of you voted for Titus. We're big fans of him, of course, because of Space Marine 2. And it really brought me a challenge to try and find a list that I actually liked. Because I was struggling with my man the other day on stream, and then I guess like a week or two ago when I was trying him out. But he did get the slight buff to his abilities. I think now he gets that additional melee on his blast. I think he always had the heal 2 on the chainsword. And then I think his last ability, we'll go over all of it when I give the primer on him specifically. But he got a little bit of a bump. I think more importantly, the Ultramarines kind of got a little bit of a stat boost here and there. And I think they just have always had a reasonable matchup into Sisters. And Sisters are all over. And I think they are some of the top decks right now because of their reinforcement. And then I guess we'll see when we have more new cards to play with. But as always, thanks for sticking with me and the channel. Feel free to show your support through likes, subscribes, comments, all that good stuff. But I think let's just get in and see what Titus and his vehicle company are bringing to the table. Okay, first things first. Lieutenant Titus, what does he do? Why are we playing him? And what matters about him? So he's coming in at the pretty regular stat line as most warlords. And then he's going to pay 2 to get the first kind of part of the ability where you're going to heal for 1, right, initially. And then you're going to choose from a host of 3 other abilities. And I want to start with what I feel is the most powerful part of Titus's kit, which is Master of Arms. Your Warlord getting an additional +1 melee, right? So you're punching for 3. And then blasting 2. Blast, as people may have noticed, whether you're a new player or you're a veteran, you know how good blast can be. Whether it's allowing you to continuously apply pressure to a Warlord, while also dealing with their board, which is kind of like the main thing. It can also work on damaging stealth units that are next to the Warlord as well. Blast 2 can really add up, and we're going to look at why we built the deck the way that we did, with Master of Arms in kind of consideration when we think about spreading damage around and how useful that can be for dealing damage to the Warlord, but also controlling the board. So Master of Arms, to me, is the biggest reason to play Titus. I think the second one is going to be his Chainsword, Righteous Fury. So you're going to heal 1 when you first do the ability, then you're going to heal an additional 1. So you're healing 2, and then you're getting +1. So you're healing 2, essentially taking 0 on your trade with the enemy Warlord, and then hitting them for 3. So this is either nice to clear out, let's say, a Sister of Battle with 3 health coming out of Junith, or you can just face bash, and have like a really nice trade where you get a little bit of chip damage and you're not taking damage back. And then I would say definitely last and definitely least is Paragon of Ultramar, which is give +1 melee and +1 range to your troops this turn. Now, you would think that this could combo fairly well with flankers, similar to how Lotharius tends to play, but this is not a permanent buff, right? And Lotharius does give a permanent range buff, and I think that makes a huge difference. Now, if this were permanent, it might put Titus a little bit too over the top, but I think, if anything, maybe you could do the opposite of what Lotharius does and give a permanent +1 melee to your troops. But the fact that this is just on your turn, I'm basically never choosing this ability. I think if this is something you want to play with, you might as well just play Lotharius, just to put it really clearly. So to kind of sum it up, I think what Titus has above all else is really Master of Arms and the ability to kind of take nice little trades, gain a little bit of health, and kind of sustain himself. And what he's lacking is reliable card draw, specific synergies with specific units, right? Whether you're playing Lotharius and you've got flankers, so they get to hit, live, and then heal back up again, or with Uriel, where you get to kind of just burn things down and keep, spreading around a lot of damage. I will say they kind of have that in common. They just do it in different ways. And Uriel can do it, I think, sort of safer and more streamlined, whereas Titus is a little bit more flexible but conditional. And that's kind of, I think, from the strengths to the weaknesses of Titus. But let's kind of dive into why we built the deck the way that we did and how it works. Okay, so we've got Titus and his vehicle company. Looking at the curve here, I don't really pay attention to curve all that much. I kind of think about like slots in the curve, like how many 4-drops do we have? You'll notice we're obviously going pretty heavy on the late game. And then, how many 2-drops? That's kind of how I think about it. But I realize that I don't actually look at the curve of decks in my deck guide videos. I feel like I should probably cover that. So let's actually take a look at the deck. So the logic of this deck is if we're leaning into what I think is Titus's largest strength, which is a little bit of self-sustain and the ability to spread around damage through his blast ability, then how do we take advantage of that? So I'm going to talk about each card. I'll probably run through the staples pretty quick, but the specific synergies and why I think there's a little bit of, something going on here. I don't know that this is the best build for Titus, but I went on a pretty nice tear this morning after reflecting on trying to build him more aggressive, and I actually feel like this shell benefits his strengths more. So let's talk about it before I get into all the theoretical. Octavia Infiltrator. This card in high tempo metas was always really good, and it was really good in mirror matches. But the reason that Octavia Infiltrator is particularly good, not just as a codex fixer being a 1 cost and being able to pair that with, when you've got multiple 5 costs in your hand and you're trying to make sure you codex, that's always a benefit of having cheap, particularly 1-drop troops in your deck. But when it says blind a damaged enemy, you have a really easy time of setting that up with Titus's blast ability, right? So maybe you don't want to hit into one of their troops, but you use blast on a previous turn, so it did get damaged. Now you can play Infiltrator. You don't actually have to set it up by attacking with like a flank unit or something, and then you can finish things off very efficiently. So I think Octavia Infiltrator is just enabled really well by Titus, kind of in a similar way that Uriel does. And I think that it's just continued to impress me, at least so far in the meta. So I would recommend it. Attack Insight, just efficient. You'll see why we're running this, especially as we get higher into the curve with much more powerful codex triggers. But that's pretty much it for that. Hero's Respite, can't stress this enough. This Warlord really suffers from not having good card advantage, and Hero's Respite is just often what you'll chuck out on the first turn. It tends to be great, if that's your opener. I think that's not a problem at all. Humanity Shield, just really, really great overall card. I mean, Sisters gets multiple of these. We get this as well at slightly cheaper rate, and it just allows you to win games that you basically shouldn't be able to win. Primaris Weaver continues to impress me. The 3 health change does make quite a difference. You can just run this out to Codex even if you have nothing else to hit. But ideally you're not doing that. And I think that it just allows us to kind of keep up in the early and mid game. Now you'll see actually when I recorded these games, and we'll get into 3 games of course, they are 3 wins and they worked out, but they were 2 of them I would say were pretty tough. Scout Bike, I shaved to 1. We are running a full vehicle package, and I'll kind of explain why. But I kept drawing both of these in multiple games, and I'm like, this card is really bad late. It does benefit from Battlefield Supremacy. It knocks it down to a 1 energy, which is nice. It can be a really great opener, especially if you go right into Tech Marine, but I don't think we can afford to run 2. But I think running 1, honestly, is fine. And in some matchups, it's going to be great. In other matchups, it's going to be kind of whatever, but it's still cheap and still can do some work. Outrider, I think, again, if you're kind of leaning into the vehicle package, then Outrider benefits pretty well. And specifically, why we're playing this is because, although we could play the Inceptor, this has a Codex trigger. And as you notice, we're running Avenging Zeal, not to spoil the top of our curve here, or the end of our curve. But because I want to play this, and I'll explain the logic behind it, then I want to be codexing pretty often. And Outrider just kind of fits that slightly better than Inceptor because Inceptor doesn't have codex. And that's also why we're going to be running... oh no, we're right. I'm thinking of another build. Right. And then Primaris Tech Marine, just obviously good when you're running a host of vehicles. So I've been very happy with that. It is weird to not run more 3-drops in this build. I got to be honest. That's one of the Ultramarine's biggest strengths. But I think with the makeup of this build, it kind of works out. Because the early turns, you can just use your Warlord ability. And that's kind of why we're building it the way we are. Where we don't have a ton that we need to be establishing early. We're not running firstborns and things like that. And then we're kind of really filling in the curve, basically 4 and up. Cronus can be really great late game, flanking in, a unit when you have like a lot of energy and it's late game and you're trying to make some headway. But Cronus is just, his stats have gotten better and better over time. And also his ability, drawing a vehicle, giving it armor 2, is just excellent. So Cronus is basically a kill on sight card and just generally performs very well. Battlefield Supremacy. So when I think about late game for Ultramarines, when I think about going tall, I think about vehicles. And so it just makes sense to play Battlefield Supremacy with this build. It's good early. It's not so good late. Kind of take your wins and losses as they come. But you can still run this out on your second turn if you have High Factory. And I think that's why they put it at 4, so that it couldn't be played on the first turn anymore, but you could still technically play it on the second turn if you've got High Factory. It's definitely worse than it was, but I still think in this kind of shell, it's worthwhile, right? Because it's drawing you a vehicle that is reduced cost and it's reducing cost, obviously, of anything in your hand. So it's not affecting the board in a way, but it's affecting your hand, which allows you to influence your board a little bit more efficiently. Then we've got kind of an old favorite, Primaris Invader. This used to be a permanent buff, and then they changed it. It's still at a good break point. It can punch for 5 potentially. It's got the 5 health. I was weighing, should I be playing the Honor Guard? Should I be playing Chaplain? We're not playing a bunch of infantry, so Chaplain's out. We could play the Honor Guard over this, but I think just because we do have all the vehicle synergies, I was like, the stats are fine. And this thing still punches pretty hard. So I decided to opt for it, and I haven't been disappointed. Here's where we get into some other synergies. I think Titus is one of the best utilizers of Stormraven, because when you're blasting out 2, then Stormraven makes really quick work of a lot of boards. And I've just found, this is the deck where I'm like, yes, put 2 copies of this in it. It feels really good. It's really easy to set up. And it's just crazy that you can just, punch their Warlord as a normal attack. And you even get a bit of an advantage on the trade because you're hitting for 3 and healing for 1. Then you're blasting out. You don't even have to touch the other units. And then Stormraven and Flankers can kind of take care of the rest. 1 Inspired Retribution. Sometimes I really wish I had 2. But I just couldn't quite find the room. And I find that if you do draw this in multiples, especially in certain matchups, it's really rough. If you're playing into stealth, you're playing into flankers. But this card is really at a premium against Sisters, so we'll see. I may end up changing that. Playing 2 Impulsor, of course, playing one of the better vehicles. It got a slight stat change. That's good. And it generally just can be great. You're codexing. You can build a board out of it. And I think that there's no reason not to run it. We're running 1 Judiciar. We're not terribly interested in playing a ton of infantry anyway, but I still think this guy can pull his weight and kind of set up, important turns where you can slow things down a little bit. You can try and defend yourself a little bit. So I still think he deserves a slot. It's possible that you could cut this, turn it into an Inspired Retribution, but I still think, with tactical insight in some turns, you're able to gain quite a bit of tempo from him. And then let's look at the top of the curve, which is really where we get into kind of the late game. Running 1 Hailstrike, I just still think this card's okay. It's not incredible by any means. But because we're not really playing flankers, because we don't have a lot of synergy with the Inceptors, and we're leading again into the vehicle synergies, I'm like, you know what? Playing one of these is fine. The 1 damage tends to matter. Again, it synergizes with our ability to blast and spread around a lot of damage. So I think Hailstrike is fine as a 1-of. Librarian, you have to play. You have to play because you need card advantage, and this is just one of the best ways of playing a problematic unit. They pretty much have to answer, and then being able to draw a card. You also get the shield, which is just really great. You just need to be running this to keep your gas tank full. Running one Predator Annihilator, we're kind of spreading things out, and I think this is what I want to do. Predator to me is, and I want to try Gauge Reel at some point when I can get him. May just not be good enough anymore. I think Gauge Reel, even though he does less damage on Codex, him being a flying unit is pretty problematic for a lot of matchups, especially into Chaos in particular. And Predator is not that hard to kill anymore. But this thing can be a massive problem at times. And I would say when you're already winning the matchup, this really helps you push your pressure. And that's why we're still running one event. And when you play it on 6, it still is pretty impactful. Then we're running one Storm Talon. Honestly, we should be running 2. This card generally performs pretty well. It being a flyer, it kind of doing what you need it to in terms of its Codex trigger. It still is a pretty problematic unit. And again, pairing the blast damage plus the 3 damage to be able to spread around works really well. My change here from the games from my list now was shaving a 2-drop biker and turning it into a Redemptor Dreadnought. I have been down on this card quite a bit. Part of me has wanted this to go from 1 to 3, but I think Redemptor Dreadnought again pairs well with what Titus is doing. You can spread around a lot of damage. It does matter. It does hit really hard. It is a unit that needs to be answered most of the time. Again, it gets reduced when we play Supremacy. And I found myself just wanting at least like one more late game kind of damagey board control-y unit. And so we ended up running 2 Dreadnoughts. Again, I think you can mix and match. Like I could run 2 Storm Talon, 1 Dreadnought. I could run 2 Storm Talon and 2 Dreadnought and shave the Annihilator. There are some changes. And then really at the last, but certainly not least, is Avenging Zeal. With the fact that we can heal ourselves, with the fact that we tend to want to hit and be somewhat combat focused, and the fact that we're leading into vehicle synergies that are almost always codexing, Avenging Zeal just kind of makes sense. And I think some of the the new raid cards may really benefit Titus's kind of kit. In particular, I think the 8-drop that we'll be seeing pretty soon could really be great for Titus, and Avenging Zeal kind of does a similar thing, except that you can really discount it and swing the game, and the fact that you're playing a bunch of flankers still, it works out pretty well. So that is the build, and that's kind of the logic for why we built it this way, and honestly, it's performed much better than I originally thought. So let's get into some games. Okay, so first we're going to start off with our matchup into Nemesaur. Which I think is definitely one of the matchups we want. This is a warlord that is trying to deploy cheap units, trying to gum up the board, and we've got our ability to blast right through. So again, I really love this opener. Just draw some cards. Don't really need to be punching. Also, I go back and forth on like how much pressure I want to apply, but I know against Nemesaur, you're going to have to trade health to get rid of their units. And so there's kind of no reason just like punching turn 1 or using my ability. So you're going to see me pretty much exclusively pick the blast here. And so I get to hit. I don't heal because I haven't lost health, but then I hit them. And so we're kind of just on pace. But yeah, it's a pretty great hand. I mean, we've got interaction, we've got our flankers, and then we've got kind of our big bad vehicles for the late game. So again here, this is kind of perfect. We get to hit with our Reaver, go for the blast again, and just keep on trucking. And this is what I feel like his early game is kind of supposed to look like, and why you don't have to build him aggressively. Because if you build him aggressively, you're trying to curve out and play units, and so you're not really using his ability. So I think it kind of opened my eyes the more I tried this. The more that it made sense. So here, kind of a similar thing, right? I'm just going to keep answering their early board. And then we're going to obviously proc the Codex. We get to just trade our bike for their unit, and then hit them and get rid of both remnants. And with Nemesor's ability, those remnants don't actually go away, so the fact that we can just punch them out is pretty nice. So they get down their Lich Guard, which is always annoying. But thankfully we have a pretty decent turn here. We're just going to answer with our own pressure, which I think is correct. We're going to use our tactical insight to kind of fix our energy on this turn. And then again, you're going to see me keep chipping away with Blast, because then I get to essentially hit them and heal for 1 and hit them for 2 for free. And just doing this like chip damage over and over, especially against Nemesor, is going to matter a lot. And so, yeah, the Impulsor's going to die. I was thinking maybe if they have some AoE or whatever, they're probably going to be able to take care of it. But because the Lich Guard can't kill it itself, that's kind of nice. And they don't apply a ton of pressure here, which is really nice too. They're not like dropping more units, like stunning me and stuff like that. They just end up using Awakened Destiny and not getting too many extra cards out of it. So, pretty happy here. Just going to deploy the Annihilator. Because the only thing I'm worried about is just getting this Lich Guard off the board. And we've got enough attackers to do that. So, we're going to make really good use of these little intercessors, actually, which generally don't do that much. So we're not going to be able to fully clear it, because I realized halfway through me saying it that you have to attack this once this becomes a remnant, because it no longer has Vanguard. But I still think this was, a pretty decent play. They have to take 5 to clear the Predator. Again, when Predator is really great when we're kind of already ahead, because we're just applying. I mean, look at this life difference, right? This is kind of exactly what you want to be doing. We've got double Storm Raven in her hand. Here we've got a nice little tempo play off of what is this called again? The Invader off of Antaro, giving it flank, which is really nice. And then finally, now we can clear the Lich Guard. And hopefully not have to worry about that blocking our damage for a little bit. So this is quite a board to deal with as well. I mean, it's just a really obnoxious thing. Next turn we've got Storm Talon coming in. So, once you get snowballing, it's pretty good. But actually, OK Player has a really nice response, because this is able to... it takes the 50-50 here. I think it could have also hit here. But I guess maybe it prioritized... Oh, no, it prioritized this deck because it lived. But he's able to answer both of my threats there with the 1 card, which is pretty nice. But here we just get to dump a Storm Talon, which, again, is going to be a problem for them. And always make sure you're putting your best unit away from any other units, just to play around the Death Laser. Don't want to make that mistake. Then I get to punch out the remnants again, and just we keep applying pressure. So I'd say this is just a good matchup for us, and generally goes well. But they play Oberon, and so I'm really hoping I can hit Inspired Retribution. But I'm pretty sure I don't hit it at all here. So here I basically just have to accept, like, I'm not going to be able to make much headway, and this is a play mistake. I should attack first and then use Tech Marine. I just was not really thinking about it. And here I could trade a damage off the armor, but I just don't think that's worth it. I'd rather keep the shield, not get hit back, potentially. But, of course, they've got to trade, and then they have the Tomb World. And I think usually Nemesor doesn't run Tomb Worlds. Could be wrong about that, but I actually was not expecting that. Even with some of the early game units, I was like, okay, maybe. But, again, we're going to kind of see the power of Blast. Going to be able to draw cards, see what we want to do. And then we're going to take Blast. Literally taking it like the whole game. We're going to get our guaranteed damage on the Warlord to put them within almost death range. So get the first Storm Raven. And then I definitely need to clear the damaged Hexmark. That's like the most problematic unit. So we're going to do that with our Tech Marine. And here I want a Codex as well. So, because that draws me another card, puts another shield on me, and then we hit Avenging Seals. It's just like pretty insane. And the way this works out, I actually, it's really tough for me to figure out, like, in the moment how I was going to win this game, because I was like, oh, if I attack him, then I have to go here. And then I was like, no, I can just attack the Remnant. Right? And so then I can attack the Remnant, get the blast, and then kill them with Storm Raven. So I don't even have to deal with Oberon. That's how much damage we're able to spread around. We pretty much had them playing from the back foot from the beginning. And then we, you know, with the cards we got, we drew twice off of the Librarian. We drew an additional 4 cards off of Double Heroes Respite. And then we just close out the game. So I would say that's just kind of like the best matchup and outcome. But let's get into another Necron foe, shall we? Okay, Imatech, just the old foe of the Ultramarines, was always a really tough matchup for the most part. And I'm just mulling this hand because I just want stuff that is not super high costed. Obviously, hoping to hit Battlefield Supremacy pretty much every game. So that's just my explanation for this mulligan. And then we get like some okay stuff. But I imagine that this matchup is a lot tougher, right? They're playing bigger units. They're able to also kind of get some chip damage and have some decent trades here and there. So it's a lot harder than Nemesaur. And as you can see through this game, it's going to be very, very tough for us to get there. So here, I go for the Scout Bike, and I kind of just say to myself, sure, I could hit and use my ability. But Scout Bike means that they, you know, either maybe deploy a unit to deal with it, or it's just going to sit there. So they choose to kind of let this happen, which is really great for us, right? Because we have the Blast too. And so that's kind of have an awkward turn, right? I've got 2 5-drops in my hand. So I could have played out the Invader, but then I have like nothing to do the turn after if I used Hive Factory. So we just kind of go for like a nice little value play here. And I sacrifice my bike, knowing that it's going to die, but just to make sure I clear the 3-drop Remnant. Wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if they reanimated it, but like I've gotten what I needed out of the bike. We're going to play their Destroyer here. And yeah, just going to keep on moving. Got a bit of an awkward turn here. And so I just go for Impulsor. Because if I play Judiciar and I miss the stun, it's going to feel really bad. This way, again, they still have to expend, you know, honestly, I feel like either way I'm kind of screwed. But also trying the, having the attack insight, it might have been better to wait. So they end up just protect protocoling, which is fine. It's possible that Judiciar was the better play last turn. I don't know. I kind of go back and forth. Because it would have had a really high impact if we were able to stun. So I think maybe I should have taken the coin flip there. So yeah, here again, we're just going to take the blast like most of the time. It's just really good. Get the free 2 damage. And then I am going to play the Outrider to get rid of the Remnant. So, get to heal 1. Get that free 2 damage on Imatech. But honestly, I'm not loving the position we're in. Just knowing that, you know, it's kind of a ticking time bomb dealing with Tomb World and not really having a board established is pretty rough. Nice size, a nice answer here. You know, just to kind of develop a little bit of defense for them. And so we just try to play out our units and use our ability. It's kind of like all we're trying to do here. Again, we're going to take Blast because it's just really efficient. Able to clear the Vanguard unit and hit them. And then just knowing that the Invader's just going to trade with their flyer. So they're very much up tempo and we're responding to them, which is generally not where you want to be. Then they play Ghost Arc and I'm like, oh boy, this is if I don't draw Inspired Retribution now, it's gonna be really tough. And we don't. So we just have to keep playing our own threats and trying to get some sort of advantage here. Again, it could have gone for the Judiciar, but the Judiciar gets absolutely destroyed by Ghost Arc. And so I kind of just opt to get a little bit of chip damage again. And just hope that we can kind of whittle down the Ghost Arc and see what we can do. Don't often see this guy, the Royal Warden. But here it allows them to make pretty quick work of our board. And then I'm faced with two massive units on the other side. And here they just go for the 5 to face, which I think is reasonable. I usually opt to go to clear a unit in positions like that. And then here I just hope that the Redemptor can get us through to the Ghost Arc, because that's the thing that matters the most here. Could have Inspired Retribution, but I'm like, I think I just got to chance it to try and pull ahead here. Because now the life totals are even. I just hope that I can save Inspired Retribution for something else. Got the good old destruction here. Putting us really far behind on life now. Just completely turning the tempo of the game. But again, you know, we're kind of able to hang in there with our healing. And the fact that we can kind of like take some nice little trades with these Octavio infiltrators where we're not taking damage back. Yeah. The Existings here is like, yeah, I think you might be in trouble, buddy. And I go, oh, I am. But I'm not out of this yet. So here we get to take the free trade. We get the blast. And I am just going to end up not tactical inciting here. Because although I would love to stun, I don't want a Humanity Shield yet. I'm hoping that I can just live here. And thankfully they roll a 2 and not a 3. And they resurrect the Royal Warden, but it doesn't get the... You don't get rally effects back. Rally has to be played from hand. We go to 2. But we've got the Humanity Shield. And so we know if we can just line up enough damage that maybe we can buy enough time. And we do have the Tactical Insight, which matters a whole lot. And so glad that we saved it. So here, we're just going to go for the max heal, which is 2 off of the Chainsword. We go for Tactical Insight. We know we're going to be able to take out the Royal Warden with the Predator by itself, which is really, really nice. And so we can aim 5 damage at Imatech and make sure that we don't die. So we're just hoping that we've got enough in the gas tank to try and finish out the game next turn. And generally, I would say Methodical Destruction is usually a 1 of. I don't find most players are playing 2, so I'm just hoping that this tank can stick around. And although they get a pretty nice value turn, they've only got 1 Vanguard, and they don't have a way to kill the Predator. So that's just going to be lethal, because all we need to do is clear that little pesky Vanguard, and we've got the win. So go for a little taunt back there. And we got 10 exactly between our Warlord and the Predator, and that's going to be it. So you can see how, like, Imatech really was able to answer and then turn the tempo, but we also had, like, a nice life lead over the course of, like, the first 7 turns, I guess. And that sort of allowed us to hang in there a little bit, get greedy with Humanity Shield, and then close out the game. Okay, and for our last game, we're going to play against good old Junith. This hand's great. We're going to be able to Hero's Respite turn 1, or use our ability. We've got Reaver, which responds. We've got Invader that we can develop that gets cheaper, and we've got Battlefield Supremacy to go late with. And so this hand is just a full keep. Any hand with Battlefield Supremacy is just going to be what we're looking for. So we'll get to kind of see again, you know, sort of like Nemesis style, when we play against a warlord that's ability is like developing a unit, we do really have a lot of ways of kind of making them play to us because of the advantage that we get out of having flankers and having Titus's blast ability. So here, I think it's just worth it to make them have to address the Reaver so that they're not praying. And it obviously allows me to take out the unit and stop their prayer on turn 1. That's why Reavers can be quite good into this particular matchup. And we know we don't want to go late, so we're definitely going to be trying to apply pressure wherever we can. And here, because they're not praying, I can take the time to just kill the sister. And then I go heal back up to 35, which is nice. And we just kind of chill. And so then they take their turn to Relics. This is like kind of a perfect sequence for us. Even though Relics is always tough to see because it's really important to sisters. This turn works out for us because we want a battlefield supremacy anyway. We don't have to respond to their board, and we can still stop their prayer with our attack from our warlord. So this is a pretty decent start given the circumstances. And then they're going to be able to guarantee that 5th faith, but now that they've been nerfed down to needing 6 faith to use Junith's ability and Erica's ability, it actually does matter. And here we can do a lot of things, but I think the most important thing is trying to keep them off that 6 faith. And so playing the Storm Speeder allows us to do that. Wish we could take the time to clear the sister battle, but that's not the most important thing right now. So we get that little damage spread there. They're going to take Hallowed Martyrs, which is nice to establish pretty early. And they are going to take some damage here, but they're able to clear out the speeder because they need to. This card was always really great into Junith in particular for obvious reasons. So, and then they develop the Preacher, which is honestly really nice, having that shield. And we don't have a flanker in our hands, so we can't really address it effectively. And I believe, and I could be wrong, let me know in the comments, I think when Predator hits, it goes for like highest attack. And for a while I used to think because this has technically combined stats that are higher, that it would always hit here. But I think I was told a while back that it is just highest attack, so that was a 50-50, and we just missed it. So this is a really good response from our opponent. They're really like gumming up the board. And although, yes, like generally we can respond well to that, we don't have a ton of ways of punching through that effectively when we have to deal with Shield and Vanguard. But the Predator being unaddressed is also a massive problem. So I just take the time for the Predator to take that out because it's going to absorb, you know, the Codex procs, and that's just terrible. We're definitely going to go for our Master at Arms. Try and spread around some damage. I want to get that shield off. And I don't want to play anything, you know, to get mowed down by the Hallowed Martyrs if I don't have to. And so here I'm just going to go for developing our board. Unfortunately, again, hits Junith, which procs Hallowed Martyrs, which is not really what we want. But yeah, if someone knows for sure how Predator works on that, I'd be really interested to know. And they have a pretty good response here. They're still not on 6 faith yet, but they're able to clear out the Predator. But it takes, you know, kind of half their turn to do that. And, you know, we still got a bit of gas in the tank. We're kind of running low on units, but we do have the Hero's Respite. And just a good way of making that Hallowed Martyrs get the biggest bang for their buck here. And then I think very smartly, they just guarantee the 6 faith off of having 2 of the priest's abilities that turn. I think that was really smart. And so they're able to develop another unit. And so here I'm like, all right, let's start digging. Let's start trying to set up, you know, another decent board. And I think, was this a misplay? I feel like I did something weird here. Have to play the Infiltrator. Right. We get the Codex. And then we get the boost. Yeah, this is fine. I mean, we developed the board. We can't kill the priest, though. And I think, was there a way for us to kill priest? We needed 5 spread around. I don't know. I don't know if there was actually a better line there. But I remember kind of sitting there and being like, not being able to kill this priest is really bad. So that kind of sucked. Maybe I could have gone like Storm Raven that turn into Blast plus Reaver. That actually would have done it, I think. Yeah, so that might have been better. So here they have a really nice development with the 7-drop, which I don't see all that much superior. And so it's here I'm like, all right, we got to start ripping the Storm Ravens, I think. It's also a good time to do it because Hallowed Martyrs would just chop apart our board. And I basically just have to spend the rest of this turn taking out their board. So this, with our blast, allows me to do that. And all the while, we're chipping away their life total, right? So that's kind of, why this build, I think, benefits in the way that we've put it together. Here I just have to trade my Invader. As much as I don't want to, as much as I want to hit their face, we're not running Death from Aboves. Like, we don't have that kind of reach. We're really playing through our vehicle units for the most part. And so here I know I'm in trouble. Thankfully, we've got the Inspired Retribution in our hand. And we just have to use it. There's really no other recourse. And then we draw some 1-drops, which is just like not good at this stage in the game, unfortunately. And you'll just see me here, use my ability as much as I can, Definitely want to hit them first before I develop this Invader. So again, punch them for 3, spread some damage around. We're on 26. We've just been kind of beating down this entire game. I think this is kind of, Titus's strength. And then they use Emperor's Judgment on the Invader, and I'm like, excellent. Because then if I develop better vehicles later, then I thankfully don't have to worry about that. But it is a huge tempo swing, right? And then the Beacon of Faith, I'm like, oh, okay, we might just lose now. It's definitely looking pretty grim after this. They get to pray their whole board. They get to heal, 4 health from 7 to 11. They also establish a unit that I can't Retribution. Doesn't matter because we've only playing 1 in the deck. But just a pretty rough position to be in at this stage in the game. We draw a Humanity Shield, then we draw another Scout Bike, which is what inspired me to put another Redemptor Dreadnought in over the second bike, because I just think 2 bikes is probably not needed. And then here, I just got to basically say, all right, I'm not dead on board. And so all I can do is just hit them, spread around a little bit of damage, take out that sister to save myself a little bit of life, and then I don't play anything. And the reason being is because I need to be able to codex and use Tactical Insight properly. And so I actually just need to hold all of this in my hand to play alongside whatever I draw next turn. So it looks kind of weird to not play anything, but there's basically like a lot of downside if I'm not able to codex properly next turn. And so we're 100% going to have to use our Humanity Shields. I didn't count up the damage, but it's definitely lethal at this point. And I'm going to pause here for a second. So I think I made a mistake here. And you'll see what line we take. And I'd be interested what people think. I think in hindsight, it is better to Avenging Zeal, pump to 4, and then use my Humanity Shields, where they basically can't do anything, right? And so I hit them for 4. Can't take any damage back. They go to 5. They're going to be able to heal back up to 6. And then I have likely lethal with my attack for 4 down to 2. I could pump it up to 5, right? Basically guarantee it with the Dread. No, I can guarantee it between the Dreadnought and my ability. So I make, I think, a inferior play here. But I think, looking back, it should have been Avenging Zeal. Bonk them with Humanity Shield. They can't really do anything. Then we develop the Dreadnought plus my ability to all but guarantee killing them unless they've got some sort of Vanguard unit, and with Tac Insight probably being able to guarantee it. So instead, I'm like, oh, maybe with Redemptor Dreadnought, I'm not going to have to use Humanity Shield. But I just kind of quickly realized, right, as I'm doing this, wait, no, if I want to get the Tactical Insight, I'm going to have to use Humanity Shield this turn. So I think it's just, I sequenced it wrong. Just doesn't make sense to sequence it this way when I get so much more out of hitting them for 4 2 turns in a row, or potentially 4 then 5. So don't do what I did, folks. Get that other Redemptor Dreadnought proc. Yep, and then we hit. We are able to clear some stuff out, like, but again, it's like they're happy, right? Because now they get to spend their units in their turn addressing our board because they can't even hit us. So I really just did this in the wrong order. And so if they've got their, their Vanguard unit here, we just are likely not going to be able to close out the game. This is a weird play. I don't know why they didn't kill this. Not that it matters that much with these units alive, but like if I have another Storm Raven, right, they're just kind of screwed. So I think they were just playing a little too fast. I've definitely done that myself. So, but praise be to the Emperor, he was with us and not the sisters, because they don't have a Vanguard unit, and so we've definitely got more than lethal. We can just Avenging Zeal, and that's it. So again, I think I sequenced this wrong. I think I opened myself up to not being able to close out the game. So yeah, it's a good thing to learn from. But yeah, and then we end the game on 20 life. I mean, it's really crazy. Like, you kind of get these chip damage, and you're able to kind of snowball slowly but surely. So yeah. Okay, folks. Well, that is Titus and his vehicle company. I've actually really liked this build. I think it can benefit maybe even from some of the updates. Still definitely in the kind of like early testing phase, but it's felt like it's really playing into Titus's strengths and not trying to kind of force him to be an aggro warlord. Because I just think that his ability, especially the Master at Arms, is really good. The blast ability. And so being able to utilize that most turns, especially in the early game, and then going into the late game, even though that's not really Ultramarine strength in a lot of ways, I think that their aggro decks tend to be more effective. Like I said, I don't think Titus is my first, hardcore competitive pick for Legendary. But you guys wanted to see it, and genuinely I think that this is the right approach for him. And I think, check it out. Let me know what you think in the comments. I'd be interested to see how people would adjust things or kind of, what different card choices might be more synergistic. But this is like my final build after quite a bit of testing over the last couple days. And I think that, I'll continue iterating on it, but I think this is a good place to be when it comes to wanting to play, the Space Marine 2 Legend Titus himself. So, we're kind of just like taking a little climb up and up into the ranks on Ultramarine, and I think we'll be playing more of them this season. So, definitely let me know. I saw the poll. We'll probably at least get my other, I would say like higher tier lists out there for Uriel and Lotharius. I don't think a ton has changed in the builds, but it's always nice to have a refreshing video. I think we're going to do Lotharius next. You can let me know in the comments what you'd like to see more of when it comes to the Ultramarines. But I haven't done an updated list for him in quite a long time. Uriel I have several videos on, and Tigurius I also think I have several videos on, and Calgar. So I think that's where we'll go next. But thanks for sticking with me. I'm sure the video's long enough. So let me close that out here, and I'll catch you guys next time.